A candidate on the ballot, Michael Rectenwald, would have been my preferred choice. Now, you guys know that I've for a long time called myself a small L libertarian, meaning that I do not belong nor affiliate with the Libertarian Party, but I do believe in the libertarian philosophy of government. And so I am drawn to watching the proceedings of the Libertarian Party convention. I was saddened to see this schism. There's always been a schism within the Libertarian Party. I mean, it goes without saying that it is the nature of the libertarian philosophy and ideology that we debate how far one goes in terms of government interaction or lack thereof. All of that to say, I was saddened to note that party candidate Michael Rectenwald failed in the, I believe, 7th ballot to secure the votes to become the Libertarian Party's nominee. And sadly, Chase Oliver will carry that banner. But that could be good things for Donald Trump. With all of that in mind, we welcome Michael Rectenwald to the program. He is a longtime professor and author and libertarian, and he joins us to discuss the proceedings over the weekend. Mr. Rectenwald, thank you for being with us. How are you, sir?
I'm okay. Thanks for having me back.
It has to sting. I understand that. I mean, going into the convention, is it fair to say that you were the leading candidate to become the Libertarian Party nominee?
Yes, it is, because I had the support of the biggest voting contingent, the Mises Caucus, that's M-I-S-E-S, named after the great Austrian economist Ludwig von Mises, free market economist from the Austrian school. And not only that, I won in the first 5 rounds of voting. I was in the clear lead the whole way through. And then at the last round, really the 6th round was the really determinative round. And something happened there. There was some backroom chicanery, and that's how it all went down.
So talk to us, for those who have not been observing the Libertarian Party of late. And I don't want to be dismissive of the impact of the Libertarian Party, far be it from me to do so, because I consider myself a son of the philosophy of government, right? Of the libertarian philosophy that, government serves best, that serves least, and only when absolutely necessary. That said, give us the state of the Libertarian Party right now, absent this vote over the weekend, and we'll get into that in a moment, but what would you consider the state of the party to be?
It's extremely divided, and I believe partially infiltrated by a kind of identity politics contingent, a kind of leftist movement that is very interested in so-called trans rights and LGBTQ agendas. That's what Chase Oliver represents. I don't believe in special rights for special groups. There are no extra rights. There's no such things as trans rights. Everybody has the same rights, and trans people have those rights too. But they want special considerations from the state. They are looking for federal government considerations and protections, and that makes no sense, because, as I said, there's no special rights accorded to any particular identity categories, or there shouldn't be. And so what we're looking at in a party is there's one contingent, which is the Mises Caucus, which you might say is rather conservative. And I should say, it's conservative in the sense that they want to conserve the true meaning of libertarianism. It's the Ron Paul revolution is what the Mises Caucus represents. Mm-hmm. And that is getting the state out of our business, getting, more liberty, personal liberty at the local level, and resisting federal impositions that are unconstitutional. So, excuse me, my voice is a little bit hoarse from a long weekend of yelling across a large convention floor.
No, I understand, of course.
But at the end of the day, what happened was one of the candidates who had promised to endorse me no less than 4 times and once suggested right before he stepped to the microphone to make a point of privilege that he would not endorse my opponent, whom I was leading by a substantial amount. Then 20 seconds later, he goes to the mic and not only endorses my opponent, but says he is going to be his VP. So that threw all of that guy's votes. Mike Termott, that's his name. His votes went to Chase Oliver because that's what his voters were intended to do. Now, he had only reached at the maximum after the elimination of many candidates. I think there were 8 or 9 candidates. He had only reached a total of 19% of the vote, but that was enough to tip the whole thing toward Chase Oliver and to take the 5 rounds that I had won and flush them. And so what we're left with is Chase Oliver and Mike Termott. Chase Oliver is a left-leaning libertarian of sorts whose idea of liberty is really about, like, do you have the liberty to change your sex? Sure, you have the liberty if you're stupid enough to think you can do that.
Well, let me pardon me for interrupting, Mr. Rectenwald, but let me do a little rundown. Because, I mean, Oliver is, and I understand the Libertarian Party has different ideas about free trade, but Oliver's open borders, right?
Yes, he is. He calls it Ellis Island style immigration that he prefers, which means basically just having a port of entry and letting everybody in. But he's essentially open borders, and there's a contingent of the party that is open borders. They think wrongly, I believe, that the movement of goods and the movement of people are the same thing, and of course they're not.
Right.
Because goods, when they come into a country, have been invited by the buyers, whereas immigrants move of their own accord, and oftentimes, especially now, are not invited to come. And likewise, they're brought into the country at a great cost to the taxpayers. And this is what I argued throughout the whole campaign. And for some reason, a contingent of the party cannot understand that taxpayers should have a right to determine who can come into the public property that they pay for. I mean, I don't understand why that's so difficult for these people to grasp, but it seems to be. There's a kind of virtue signaling that goes on within the Libertarian Party. And open borders is like a virtue signal to suggest let anybody in. But I've challenged them, how about into your living room? And they don't have an answer for that. In other words, they're willing to let them into your public space. They're not willing to let them into their own public space. They want to be so generous. Why don't they invite them in?
So I thought that I'm torn here as a small L libertarian, Michael, because I believe in the things that you have talked about for so many years. I've followed your career. I've read your work. But I'm almost in this moment in time, and I say this with all due respect to you, I'm almost happy that you didn't receive the nomination, because I think a lot of liberty-minded people would gravitate to you, and I think that would have culminated in the election potentially of Joe Biden. I know you hear this a lot. Do you agree with me that Chase Oliver is the better candidate for Donald Trump in terms of what his position on issues are and what that might mean for the vote in November?
Yes, I mean, that's exactly true. Here's the irony. This contingent of the party tried to paint me as a Trumpian, and that I was just going to smuggle Trumpian ideas into the party and effectively, and after being nominated, abdicate my nomination and then drop out and help throw the election to Trump. I had no intention of doing so, but here's the interesting thing, as you pointed out, that Chase Oliver will help Trump more than I would have ever helped Trump by a long shot. He will definitely draw votes from Biden, because there's a contingent of people that will go for this leftist left libertarianism and that will siphon some votes away from Trump. Absolutely.
Michael Rectenwald is our guest. He was the runner-up for the Libertarian Party nomination for President of the United States of America over the weekend at the Libertarian Party convention, talking about he's smarting over that defeat, and rightly so. I think it was swiped away from him at the last minute, and he just described how. We're getting a lot of media reports, and I did not. I saw excerpts of the Trump speech. How do you believe the party received him? And what do you think went into his decision to speak before the party? Are you happy that he was there?
I think it was a great opportunity for the party to get attention, to get our platform out in the public discourse, and to advance the cause of liberty. If we could move Trump in a direction of liberty and he becomes president, then that would be a good thing. He promised to commute the sentence of Ross Ulbricht, who's in prison for Silk Road. One of the main demands of the party towards Trump. And the way that he was received was a kind of exhibitionism of Trump derangement syndrome and a one-upping of that every time we were asked to speak about Trump after the three of us were. I was the straw poll winner in the debate. I was the hands-down winner in the in the nomination speech. I've moved more people to their feet than anybody else by a long shot. I even had standing ovation for my video. But in any case, what they were doing was trying to show who was the most, who had the greatest symptoms of Trump derangement syndrome. And that was the display. It was ridiculous virtue signaling again. And I wouldn't go along with it. It was too ridiculous for words, because I don't think Trump is by any means like the worst president in American history, like these people seem to believe, having such a very abbreviated sense of history and an extreme myopic viewpoint.
Well, let's talk. I mean, you're the strong L libertarian. I'm the small L libertarian. But obviously, I have certain disagreements, but I appreciate the fact that Trump began the process of disentangling us from foreign engagement. I appreciate that he cut a line in the sand between human movement across the southern border and trade across the southern border. I can understand why we might have a concern about certain tariffs. And my major concern with Trump, as supportive as I am of him, but for our purposes today, would be his adding to the national debt. I believe the greatest existential crisis that faces the United States of America is the $34+ trillion in debt that we currently are. I sadly believe that Trump was a contributor to that, but the COVID notwithstanding. How do you respond to that? Do you agree with that analysis? And for libertarian-minded individuals, is there a way to support Trump with all of that in mind?
Well, let me just say this, is that before August of 2023, I was strictly a lowercase libertarian myself. I only joined the party in August, so it would have been interesting had I won. That means I would have swooped in and within 9 months captured the top nomination of the party. So I got to hand it to myself. I almost did that. In fact, it was well within my grasp. And that would have been a real boon to the party, because as it turns out, many of the libertarians in the party are not going to vote for Chase Oliver, and many, I've read, are going to vote for Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what they get for having elected this guy, for having nominated this guy for their candidate. So I agree with you. And as to your analysis of Trump, I agree with it mostly. That's why I say he's not the worst libertarian president we've ever had, or the worst president from a libertarian perspective. I do believe that he did bring down regulation.
Yeah, deregulation was a huge part of his first year. Yeah.
Yeah, there was a lot of deregulation, and I would be cutting all regulations, but that's just my view. We don't have to go into that. Also, I think you're right about the debt. That the CARES Act added $6 trillion to the national debt at least, and then there were other things as well. And I do think that he was attempting to eliminate foreign intervention and entanglements. And in fact, when he tried to bring troops home, his own generals betrayed him and kept them there. So we're talking about a mixed bag. I'm not going to say Trump is great, for libertarianism or for liberty, but he's not the worst thing that ever happened.
Well, and not to interrupt your answer here, but Michael, one of the big aspects to what he is doing, I don't know that his motivation is liberty and openness and civil liberties, but deconstructing or attempting to deconstruct some of the entanglements of the bureaucracy and the deep state, to include NSA, FBI, CIA, et cetera, and to push them into the open with regard to how many civil liberties they have chosen to violate of the American people over the years. I'm talking FISA warrants and these types of things. I think it's residually good for libertarianism.
Well, I'm not gonna argue against you on that, and I'm not gonna really take that view. I'm gonna remain neutral with reference to that, if you don't mind, because I want to protect the libertarian brand, despite its having been tarnished this past weekend. And
let me ask you this with this in mind, and I understand that, I mean, you are fresh off of this, and you're very kind to agree to this interview today, because I know that it has to smart. But at the same time, Donald Trump said over the weekend that he would invite libertarians into his cabinet should he get reelected. If Mr. Rectenwald, he turned to you, would that be something that you would consider?
Yes, absolutely.
Well,
because why would it hurt to have a libertarian in his ear? How could that hurt America? If I could serve in that role, I would welcome it. I think that it's necessary to get someone with a real libertarian, pure libertarian perspective into the cabinet or into some major office within the administration that could be a voice that would push the Overton window further towards liberty. That's the goal of my campaign. It wasn't to advance the Libertarian Party per se. The goal of the Libertarian Party, as I understand it, is to enhance and expand liberty. So in any way that I can help expand liberty, I will do it.
Well, we look forward to that. I look forward, maybe spending czar. Michael Rectenwald, spending czar in the new Trump administration.
I would take that. I would take that in a heartbeat.
I would love to see it. Well, thank you, Mr. Rectenwald, for being on with us, spending some time with us. We look forward to future conversations, and bless you. I appreciate you, and we'll talk again very soon.
Thanks so much for having me.